I haven't owned an iPad in about a year. Around that time was when the M1 Max came out. I got a MacBook Air, and I had an iPad. Now I will say, I did not have an iPad Pro or an iPad Air. I had the $329 budget iPad because I don't really use iPads, professionally. It's for content consumption. But I found when the M1s came out, they were so fast that I pretty much didn't really ever touch my iPad, so I sold it. But when I was ordering the iPhone 13 mini this year, I had a moment where I thought, am I actually gonna hate the size of this screen? While I love small phones, I'm a normal human being and I do spend time on the couch watching YouTube videos and Netflix shows, even though I have a TV that's much larger mounted on the wall in front of it. So I thought, you know what? Let me test an iPad mini alongside it and see how I feel. Maybe this is when I'm gonna actually use an iPad again. So since I picked up the iPhone 13 mini, I've been using alongside it the iPad mini. And while I do love the iPhone 13 mini, and there's a whole video about that on my channel that you can check out also, I love the iPad mini, and it is now my favorite current Apple device. Now, is the iPad mini perfect? No. I do have a few issues with this device. Things like battery life, the screen brightness is probably a little bit too dim still, and it does look like, the home screen wasn't really built for this screen size. It's like some iPad OS updates basically, that's all it really needs. But in reality, these complaints are actually very minor, and I have to nitpick to find them. Overall, for the way that I use an iPad, which I use an iPad like how normal people do, or how most people use phones, I browse Reddit and Twitter, and I check out basically every social media site. I watch YouTube videos and Netflix shows. I read books and comics on it. And honestly, for those uses, the iPad mini is really amazing. Battery life can get a little annoying. I find that at the very least I'm charging it every night, but sometimes about halfway through the day I am hooking it up to a charger. I don't hate the bezel sizes actually, because I need someplace to put my big old fat thumbs, so that actually kind of works out for me. And I do love having another USB-C device around. I don't have to mess around with lightning cables that much anymore. And on top of that, especially because I watch a lot of content on the iPad, the speakers are actually really, really good, and I'm very surprised by them. I wish it had Face ID over the fact that it uses Touch ID. It's just something that I'm so used to Face ID at this point that when I'm like putting a password in for a website, having to reach up and use my fingerprint doesn't really, it's not my first instinct anymore. So it's something I still have to think about. So I wish it had Face ID, but I'm sure there's budget reasons for it. And this device is not a laptop killer like the M1 iPad Pro is, but I also don't use it like how I would use an M1 iPad Pro. This is a device that I've paired with my iPhone. I use my iPhone for a lot of things, but when I'm gonna go and lounge on the couch and watch something or just browse through Twitter, that's what I'm using the iPad for. And people have complaints about even using this device for those type of things, like it doesn't have 120 Hz refresh rate display, no Pro display, blah, blah. Yes, does 120 Hz rate look great? Yes, it does. It really looks good. But here's the thing, you get over it really fast, you actually stop noticing it. Unless you're using devices side by side, you don't really notice. And for me, I do not care that it's a 60 Hz refresh rate. I'm reading articles on websites, like who cares? Who really, really cares? How often are you going like this on your iPad? And then there's jelly scrolling. If you look for something like that, you're going to find it. But when you're just using the device like a normal human being, you don't really notice these things when you go, oh, okay, I'm on the next part of that webpage. What this device has become for me is the device that I pick up when I walk around the apartment. It's the device that I think about first when I want to go through Twitter or when I want to read some news articles. It's the device that I use when I prop myself up in bed and I want to read a book. It's a complementary device to my phone. I don't really text on it, I text on my phone. I can on the iPad, but it's not my first instinct. When somebody messages me, I do not pick up my iPad, I pick up my phone. But when I want to watch a YouTube video, I pick up my iPad. For my use case, for who I am as an iPad user, and what I think is a normal person, the iPad mini is great. I can see why the M1 is so much better for specific people, but I don't use it that way. So those are my thoughts so far on the iPad mini. I'm gonna have a full review later where I've actually gone through and tested everything with this device. But until then, leave your comments down below. Any questions you have for me about the iPad, I will get back to you as quickly as possible. But let me know, do you have one? Do you enjoy it? Are you thinking of getting one? Let's talk about it in the comments and we'll kind of go from there. Until next video, guys. See ya.